30th meeting of the Murfreesboro City Council. Councilman Eddie Smotherman has our prayer. There's Eddie. And I have got a group I want to introduce after the prayer that will do our pledge.
There you go. I bet it's some Cub Scouts or something.
Absolutely.
There you go. If you would, please pray with me. Lord, thank you for this beautiful day we've had in Murfreesboro. We ask for you to continue to protect our police officers and our firefighters. We pray for blessings upon our teachers, our staff, and all those people that help make this a great city. I'm thankful for our health. I'm thankful for the wonderful life we have in Murfreesboro and the many blessings that you've given us. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I want to introduce Cub Scout Pack 615 from Walter Hill. So when I call your name, just y'all start coming on up. But this group is led by Alexis Littlefield. And then we have Charlie Ballou, Zachary Shaffrith, Jonah McPeters, Noah Dunlap, Guy Littlefield, Nathan Gibson, Rugby Jenkins, Lucas Safantino, and Tristan Garbison. And I can say, spoke to this group before, this is a very, very intelligent group of young men.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, we'll move into ceremonial items, and we have a STARS Award that we want to give out tonight. Ms. Russell.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As you know, STARS stands for Succeeding Through Attitudes Reflecting Service Excellence. This evening, we recognize Barney Dale, who works as a driver in the Solid Waste Department. On Thursday, December 5th, Barney, who was on duty, stopped to help a gentleman who had fallen and needed assistance. His wife was not able to help, but she did send a thank you card that reads, "Thank you so much for your assistance when my husband fell last Thursday. I could never have picked him up after he fell without your help. Thank you for being kind and considerate. You are appreciated." Joy Smith, Director of Solid Waste Department, said Barney is a conscientious city employee who cares about doing the right thing and helping people. Thank you, Barney, for going above and beyond for our customers.
I know Barney's already out the door, but I think out of any of our departments, our solid waste drivers deal with see our residents on a routine basis every week. And so if you're watching out there and you don't know who your driver is, walk up and as they're at your house and just tell them thank you for what they do. They do a great job. All right, we'll move into, we have a teacher recognition that we want to handle tonight. Dr. Gilbert.
Good evening. Thank you so much for this time. And I'd like to thank Mr. Wes Ballard, who is a member of our school board, for being here also. Come on up, Mr. Cantrell. I have before you two national award winners, and so I think that speaks extremely well for our teaching staff. Cal Cantrell is a 5th grade math and science teacher. He was one of 31 teachers across the United States who Curriculum Associates have selected to be part of their inaugural class of extraordinary educators. And I'm just going to read what that means. Extraordinary educators must illustrate student growth and achievement through formal assessments, demonstrate classroom innovation and engagement practices for students, and they are evangelists, interesting word, for high standards and student achievement. So this is Mr. Cal Cantrell. Hal, you can just stay right there. This is Dr. Heather Knox. Dr. Heather Knox has received the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. That's the highest recognition that a kindergarten through 12th grade science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or computer science teacher can receive in the United States. And she is a gifted specialist in Murfreesboro City Schools. And I'm going to ask her to talk for just about a second about that, what that means as far as STEM, because we all hear STEM. So if we could give her just a minute, that would be great.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. First of all, I am both honored and grateful to be able to represent Murfreesboro City Schools with such a high honor. The award, being an awardee for the Presidential Award for Mathematics and Science Teaching was a great opportunity. Not only was it a lifetime personal experience that I will never forget, but professionally I was able to make connections with various people in government agencies such as NASA and other agencies that support STEM education. And I was able to learn about different opportunities that they have in connecting with different public schools and schools around the United States. In addition, it also helped us to develop a nationwide network of amazing K through 12 teachers. And also in that, it kind of had us come together and have a STEM teacher leader network where we are on an expert panel and we come together once a month and we talk about STEM education and how STEM education is going to help our students be able to reach their goals and be able to live and thrive in the coming years to come, because we all know that lives are changing and the careers and the opportunities that our children have are changing. So I thank you so very much, and I hope that these experiences and opportunities can help me serve the students of Murfreesboro City.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Council, for your support. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Gilbert and I read an email this afternoon where some other of our team members were announced as state nominations for the State Teacher of the Award, correct?
That's right. We have announced our Teachers of the Year, and typically, I can't remember a year recently where we haven't had a state finalist, so we'll see how that goes because it's very competitive, but we have our 2 System Teachers of the Year, and they will progress on to the state.
Awesome.
So that's a great thing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right, we have the consent agenda. You have 10 items on your consent agenda.
If there are no questions or comments, I move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye, we'll move into old business. Ordinance, under ordinances, we have 19008. This is a budget amendment, second and final reading.
We actually need to amend this before we do it on second reading. 2 items have been added. Initially, we had approved fire and Parks and Recreation amendments. Since then, we've received some revenues that we've used for some paving and striping for some development projects through State Street Aid. We are asking to amend the exhibit to increase revenue and expenses by the same amount, so there's no effect on fund balance. Also, at our workshop, y'all talked, and the last meeting, you've talked about curbside pickup for solid waste, and that has already been given to you as to what the effect would be. Overall, we're talking about selling 2 knuckle boom trucks and adding revenues to the solid waste fee, and then the cost of the contract. So the net effect is to decrease fund balance by $294,000. So those are amendments that, other than the $294, which you've already had explained to you previously by Mr. Gore, the other one has no effect. We just, in order to spend the money, we have to budget it.
I'll move for approval as amended.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance. Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland. And now
Aye.
we would need to approve it as amended.
We'll need to approve the budget amendment as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll move into land use matters from Previous meeting rezoning approximately 122.19 acres located along Cason Trail, Eastview Drive, and Racket Club Drive. Mr. Huddleston.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I am standing in for Matthew Blomley, who has a couple days off, much-needed days off. I have just a couple of opening remarks, just to remind you of this project, and then I have a little bit of additional information, and then we'll be ready to entertain any questions or discussion you may have. So if we'll go to the presentation, Hidden River Estates was deferred last meeting after a public hearing, so no additional public hearing is required. Just a note to our legal staff tonight that this petition was accepted, requiring a supermajority for adoption tonight. If you so move to adopt tonight, it will require a supermajority. And so tonight will be action on first reading. As far as the additional information, from the meeting and then from some follow-up inquiries, thought that this exhibit might be helpful. What you see here is a copy of the development plan. In the light blue would be public roads that would be connected or constructed to serve the development, and then the red roads here would also be the private roads. And those roads will have access restrictions, not allowing through traffic, but would only serve really the residents and those guests that have access. And so this shows us that roadways to the north, and the north is to the left of the exhibit, would connect to an existing Eastview Drive and also an existing Racket Club Drive. Roadways to the south would connect Cason Trail to Salem Pike. The roadway to the south is not yet constructed, so that would be, and that's outside the scope of this project, but it is a commitment that has been made by the project developer. And so that particular stretch is in two phases. Phase one is shown here, is a Barfield Road extension. That work was proposed by World Outreach Church. The construction on it is pending. It will consist of 5 lanes at the intersection of New Salem Highway, then converting to a 2- and 3-lane section across Spence Creek. Phase 2 of this roadway, which will be constructed by Blue Sky Construction, who is also the developer of Hidden Rivers, will be upgraded to a 3-lane section for its complete length, and that was an agreement that Blue Sky made for this project. It will be open to construction traffic prior to any major construction on Hidden River Estates. So the commitment you're getting from the developer tonight is that this will be open at a minimum to construction traffic, and then as soon as practical to public traffic before major construction begins on Hidden River Estates. And then just a reminder that the portion that is in phase 2 is also residentially zoned, and it would include, at the developer's estimate, 24 additional single-family lots that are entitled by zoning today, and according to the developer's statements, they would plan to create those lots along the roadway. There was also a commitment by the developer to add a small portion of land to the city-owned trailhead for our use for expansion of the trailhead and specifically trailhead parking to help offset the additional visitors that we think would originate from Hidden River Estates and then from this development as well. So our team for question and answers tonight, Marina Rush has done most of the heavy lifting for the city. She's probably the most knowledgeable person on city staff tonight. She's available if you have questions about the development plan or the plan booklet. The design team, Bill Huddleston, Clyde Roundtree, and Brian Burns here representing the development. We'd be glad to be available for any questions or follow-up discussions that you may have. And as we said, this is again up for first reading tonight. So be glad to answer any questions.
Am I correct that I know we had a lot of opposition to this, and there were several meetings with the people in the neighborhood, in the area, and issues were brought up, and is it my understanding that all of the issues brought up was addressed and seem to have been okay as far as the road and, you know, different things?
We did quite a bit of public outreach on this between the city and the development team. The development team held 2 neighborhood meetings as the development plan changed significantly part of the way through, so they went back out. City staff also made our time available, and we met with individual groups to review information and talk about the development plan. I think Mr. Burns indicated that this has been a 12 to 13-month process since we maybe announced and held the first neighborhood meetings. I think that's right. And so what I would say is there's been a lot of public input, a lot of staff input, a lot of response from the mayor and council, and I think it's improved the project for the better. There were some things that would not have happened had this public outreach and public involvement exercise have taken place. I do think of some of the benefits to the community that come to my mind, and that includes some additional connectivity to the greenway that will be provided. This connection to New Salem Highway, I think, is a very significant element. It provides another way in and out of the River Rock area for residents there, and it'll be a signalized intersection, and it will be in place as Phase 2 of State Route 99 improvements are open for traffic, which we anticipate to be December this year. So we think that's helpful. Ms. Scales, I think I'm satisfied that the issues raised by the neighbors were addressed. I'm not sure they would agree with my statement. I think they're probably, if you talk to them individually, still have some concerns about the project. But I think their involvement in this has really had a huge impact in changing the shape and the outcome of the development plan.
And things like the road is going to be complete and everything before this project starts. And so all of that will be in writing when, you know, if this passes, and if it doesn't, well, it doesn't have to be in writing, right?
That's right. It'll be a commitment they're making for the development plan. Plus, any potential amendments that come up tonight, we would, if there are amendments, we would ask that the developer make revisions to the plan booklet before second reading. But these are commitments they're making and have made already in their plan booklet. Just a clarification tonight about the timing of the construction access and the availability of that before major construction starts.
Okay, personally, I just wanted to get an understanding. Thank you.
Ms. Shelson, there was a lot of talk, I know, and we've had lots of emails back and forth with residents, but based on the property's existing zoning, and I guess there's 2 parcels, and really a third now, about blanket zoning and comparing that to the planned development. And, you know, we talked about what the public benefit is, but can you give us sort of maybe a description of what could be built under the blanket zoning and how that works?
Sure. And have just a little information, Mayor, we had talked about before. So straight zoning limitations, I guess the best way to say it is that they're only required to develop to our minimum development standards. There are no required amenities. There's no open space required. There's very little opportunity for the residents and the city, for that matter, to maybe participate in the development plan and see significant improvements and changes to that. I think the plan development process, as we've seen in this project, you know, allows significant input and significant change to the plan. But for straight zoning, there's really not a process for that. There's minimal architectural control. And so the discussion about the densities, you know, it is not a master plan project for straight zoning, but some rules of thumb that we use as staff for RS-15 zoning is 2.5 units per acre. For RS-10 zoning, 3.5 units per acre. And there's about 78 acres as RS-15, and there's about 42 or 43 acres that are zoned to RS-10. My math on that, plus the additional ones he could come up with, is something in the range of 400 units. And you know, that's just a ballpark estimate of me standing up here and having looked at the maps tonight.
And I asked Mr. Huddleston, I wanted to get that information together on, I'd even looked at a project that was being developed on Rutherford Boulevard that, a little different zoning, but, we can't mandate on our design guidelines whether vinyl siding's used. We can't mandate whether there's any landscaping. I mean, we don't have any of those controls under the straight zoning, do we?
That's right. Our design guidelines do not apply to single-family residential where we have a good bit of architectural control. However, in the plan development process, you can and we do require information on the style of construction, on minimum sizes, on the architectural treatments, and then also really on the community and the neighborhood. I think, Mayor, I have maybe just a couple of pictures here just to give you a feel. This is a straight zone neighborhood, not any particular neighborhood, but it's not unlike neighborhoods that have been built on straight zoning in Murfreesboro. I would say that we have overhead utilities in this picture, but today, even straight zoning, we require underground utilities. So don't let the overhead utilities throw you off here, but these are really just minimum standard lots. They're nice homes, but they're I think what I see here is street and lots and homes, but not really a place or not really a neighborhood. And so I think that one of the benefits of the plan development process then is to get a bit more quality out of the development. And certainly, that's something that staff looks forward to in being able to have an impact on the quality of the development and what's built.
Mr. Huddleston, could you clarify the phrase "major construction begins"? What does that mean?
Yeah, so land disturbance permit would be the first thing that we would envision or be required on this project, and that would allow them to do major earth moving, hauling in fill, blasting and grading. Mr. Burns and his team will need to do some site clearing and some additional work to allow them to collect geotechnical information and perhaps additional surveying information, and land clearing as far as removing the vegetation would not be a part of major construction, but actually bringing what the term I would use is yellow steel onto the site to move earth and haul in fill. And so we would say before any land disturbance permit, they would need to have the connection to State Route 99 open at least to construction traffic.
So would it be unrealistic to say to restrict any construction on that site until the access to 99 is?
Yes, and that's their commitment tonight.
And to include site prep, or because the concern is that the dump trucks would be moving up and down roads that are not used to handling dump trucks full of dirt or dump trucks empty of dirt. So is that what we're saying? Or
I think it would be tied to the permitting, and when there's activity that requires a construction permit. There were 2 permits that would get issued on this property very early on. One of them be a land disturbance permit, the second would be a grading permit. And so their commitment tonight is to not receive a grading permit and a land disturbance permit until construction traffic can use that route to State Route 99. But there would be some minor stuff, and that's the site prep is not the right term for minor stuff. Site prep is major construction.
Yeah. Okay, so well, I'm sorry, I just have to make this clear because I'm not in the construction business. So will the earth be moved and dump trucks come up and down East the Racket Club and those substandard roads that they're concerned about now? Are we going to see dump trucks going up and down it?
So land disturbing activities, which would include disturbing the earth, hauling in fill, taking out fill, are not permitted until this construction road is available. So the term, will the dirt be disturbed? No, it can't be disturbed until the construction exit is available to State Route 99. And I think maybe just a clarification on that, that project's in 2 phases. I did point this out, but the first phase construction is pending. We have final construction plans in our office for final review before approval. We've had a pre-construction meeting with the company that will be building the Barfield Road extension. So that project is ready to go, and I suspect it will start within the next few days to a couple of weeks. We'll actually see some activity there. Blue Sky and Mr. Burns and his team will if approved, I would envision they'll immediately turn in development plans to show us the balance of that roadway, which we're calling Phase 2, which would connect it then to Cason Trail. And from construction sequencing and construction phasing, there is an advantage for them to build that early. Their primary electrical power feed into the site would come from that direction versus a more difficult, more costly route if they do not build this first.
And they're going to have to use some other dirt other than on site. You're not just going to move dirt around on the existing site for prep work. Is that?
It's my expectation this would be a site that some material will be brought in. I'm going to look at Mr. Bill Huddleston and see if he wants to add, if they've got an estimate of that, or if it's merely just an unbalanced site with a net haul in. So it's unbalanced, meaning it would need material hauled in.
And is Cason Trail going to be where that comes in on? Or are we waiting for?
I think Mr. Burns is committing to direct his construction traffic and his crews to use this construction entrance, including hauling in those initial materials. He and I also talked about the need to maintain construction traffic through his development as it's developing, so that we can serve those other properties. This is a 10-year build out. I will not kid you and say that no construction traffic will ever be on Cason Trail, but the crews and the initial construction effort working for Mr. Burns, he will be able to dictate they come in off of that construction road only. But that's there's a lot of ways in and out of this property, and to say that no amount of construction traffic would ever be on them would be a misrepresentation on my part. I think what I would say to you about that is there is a very convenient, very quick alternate route out. If you're a truck driver, you're going to want to get the quickest route out to get you back to where you need to be, rather than winding through residential streets and traffic. I think the ability to have an alternate construction route into this site will greatly reduce the amount of construction impacts on the local streets.
Mr. Huddleston, I've got one quick question, and it may be a simple one. I hope it is. The project itself, I know at MTSU we use gates, and this property has private roads that will be a gated community situation. Will the gates be operated by barcode scan, like on a windshield or something, or will they be keypad? And the reason I ask this is because of the size of the stacking area going from the public streets onto the private area.
I'm gonna look at Mr. Burns and see if he's got a gate style picked out, and maybe he'll want to come up and talk to you about that.
The gates on the neighborhood, we've got each section with its own gates on it. So to be honest, I haven't picked a gate system out, but I really like the way Stratford Hall works. You enter a code in, it dials the number of the homeowner, or the homeowners have their own remotes. So I like the main gates that come off Cason Trail probably won't get put in until the end of the project.
Okay, but your regular traffic will have a fob that will be able to open the gate without really stopping almost at the gate. They'll be expressing through and not stacking.
Correct.
Okay.
We'll make sure, because most of the gates are set up on each individual section. There's like 5 sections of it, so there'll be 5 or 6 sections of gates on there. Right. The main gates on Cason Trail probably won't get put on to the very end of the project, though.
Okay.
Mr. Olson, I just have one last question. You know, predominantly, a lot of the discussion has been centered around traffic. And you had sent us some information after last week's meeting, or a couple of weeks ago, regarding the bridges and sort of what's being anticipated over the next several years. Can you just give us an overview on that?
Sure, and probably should have done that in the, you know, really in the opening introduction. I think it's very significant that the traffic conditions we see in the Cason Lane and River Rock area, we know that that's a problem. What we can say is that there's help on the way. I think there might be an exhibit in the pattern booklet that might help us with that as far as a regional area. But the projects that are going on and the money is being spent on roadway improvements are quite significant. I think the first one I want to talk about is State Route 99. We worked with TDOT years ago to get an interchange on New Salem Highway and State Route 99. Interchange, the high volume, high functioning interchange. However, we had 2-lane roadway supplying it on both sides, and so what you see under construction today between Cason Lane and the interstate is a 5-lane roadway. That's anticipated to be complete by December of this year. Right now, there's very significant lane restrictions over the interstate and over the bridge, and so that's not a favorite route of drivers. It's just really causing folks to use alternate routes today, but later this year there'll be improvements there. We have information and plans that we believe that will allow us to complete a bridge over the Stones River from River Rock Boulevard into the Warrior Drive area, giving some access to the local traffic out to State Route 99. That's a project we think that could be online in the next 3 to 5 years based on current developments. Don't have all the details that we can share publicly yet, but what I would say, Mayor, is we'll be bringing that project and that package to council as soon as we can button up the details and give you an idea of what we're asking and how we plan to build that and fund it. The second the second bridge project that we're working on is a connection between West Rutherford Boulevard. If you think Church Street and I-24, and the first intersection north of that is Rutherford Boulevard. West Rutherford Boulevard then comes back toward the interstate. Our 2040 major transportation plan included a bridge connecting West Rutherford Boulevard to Warrior Drive. Just this week we met with our, actually it was last week now to think about it, but we met with our internal review staff and we looked at some alternatives. We have a transportation improvement report that we're working to finalize with a recommended route, and again we'd look to try to fund that. We think those two projects have the most significant and most immediate impact on 3 of our most congested intersections, and that would be I-24 at Old Fort Parkway, I-24 at Church Street, and then also Medical Parkway at I-24. Those 3 interchanges, because it would change traffic patterns and provide local traffic-only routes, we anticipate could take several thousand cars per day and give them some alternate routes. And those, and I like to say it this way, those are Murfreesboro residents. The people who drive into our community on State Route 96 are not going to use our local roads to go to local places. They're using State Route 96 and then the interchange to get on the interstate. And I would say the same thing at Church Street. And so these local route projects have an opportunity to benefit our residents to allow them to move locally if they don't need to get on the interstate. And so these 2 bridge projects have the capability of doing that. State Route 99 also would get some additional construction. Phase 3 would go from the interchange up to Old Fort Parkway. You think Old Fort Park, Thornton's, the golf course in that area. That project is the next phase nearing bidding, and I understand that it's scheduled to be bid on TDOT schedule. and this is a little bit out, but December of 2021, so a year and a half or so from now, that project would be out for bid. That's a 2-year project, but it will provide a 5-lane connection between the interstate and Old Fort Parkway and give some additional capacity on some of our in-town routes to get in and out of town. Phase 3 for that would also then be a later bid, and that would go from Cason Lane westward to Veterans Parkway. While that project is not, wouldn't help us in town, it will provide some additional capacity moving traffic into and out of the New Salem I-24 area. And I think, Mayor, those are the projects that come to mind that are on the city and TDOT's radar screens. I would mention there are a couple of interchange improvement projects that TDOT is tracking separately from the city that was part of the Improve Act. We do expect to see some improvements at some of our heavier traveled TDOT interchanges, longer queuing lines onto the interstate, better exit conditions onto the local roads that will make those interchanges operate more efficiently than they do today. But I don't have specific timings on those.
Mr. Charleston, would you go to the slide? It was the first slide you started with, I think, that kind of laid out the road maps. There was maybe a red and a blue. There was the difference between the public and private roads. No, not the first slide, but second one.
Yes, yes.
Without the, yeah, so I'm just curious about this. On the Cason Trail, where basically where the public road then kind of turns into the private road, is that just a two-way stop sign typically? I mean, is that what we would expect there, or is it a 4-way stop, or are you going to be able to go back and forth across that?
So we did intentionally line it up with the exit out of Hidden River Estates. Cason Trail would be the main road there, and so it would have the right-of-way, and in most cases we would expect a stop sign for the public road on the south side, and then a stop condition also for the private road on the north side, or the left and right. If conditions were to warrant it, a 4-way stop might be appropriate there. That would alternate the right-of-way of who gets to, which car gets to go next. Cason Trail, as you'll recall, was part of our Greenway and Trailhead extension, Trailhead construction project, and so it's built to city street standards up to the park entrance, and we would convert that to a public right-of-way as part of our agreement to build that project. As envisioned as a public road from the beginning, and we just take that step to declare it a public road by the city.
I'll make a comment about this, and this is much bigger picture than this project, but just kind of a for what it's worth comment. On our projects that we do, when we get these maps like this, and then we can kind of look at what the existing roadways look like, we kind of get a separate map. Sometimes it'd be good for us to be able to kind of see the whole flow as far as, see the new streets that match up to the other ones.
More of a vicinity map with the new and improved.
I can look it up over here, but it kind of helps me understand, because this thing, I think it's north degrees.
Yeah, maybe 135 degrees north is not hardly to the left of the page. It's actually a little more diagonal, but I think your design team took most advantage of the orientation of the pages to get their information on there where we could read it.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just going to say it, because that'll help us kind of get an understanding of, hey, where's traffic going to come from and go to, right, when we're talking about which roads we think it's most likely to use and stuff.
Sure, and I think the exit, the roadway, public roadway out to New Salem Highway will have some ability to attract traffic from the existing neighborhood, Stony Meadow Drive, Dodd Trail. River Rock Boulevard comes in there pretty quickly, And so a driver would have to make the decision of whether to continue on to River Rock or perhaps come further in on Cason Trail to use that. And I think there'll be a balancing of that drivers will figure out which are the best routes for their particular origins and destinations. But it will provide, access for several thousand cars per day that will not need to use Stony Meadow or River Rock Boulevard or any of the other local streets in the neighborhood.
I'll just make some general comments. I know everybody has had their hands on this for quite a while. I guess the first time I saw this was when it came through Planning Commission, when Bob Lamb was chairman of the Planning Commission. So that's how long we've been looking at this. And one thing that I think is important to say, regardless of how the vote goes on this, is there's been a tremendous amount of change in this plan from when it was originally presented. And I think that has to do with a lot of the people that are sitting in the audience. And so I know no matter how the vote goes, you have had a significant impact on changing what is being voted on. And so even if you disagree with it being done, you have certainly been heard, and there have certainly been things that have been different because of what you've done. And so I appreciate the time that staff has spent on this and the work that has gone into trying to make it the best plan we could possibly make it. With that being said, if there are no other comments, I'm happy to make a motion to approve as presented.
There may be a second, but I'd like to make some comments.
Yes,
sir. I've been chewing on this bone. This is one of the hardest votes. We've had several hard votes the last few months, and this one is a hard one too. I was educated at MTSU in planning, and so planning is an important part of what I think our function is up here. Everybody in the course of this process has done their job. The developer looked at an idea and had an idea of something he wanted to invest in and developed a plan. The public saw that plan, reacted to that plan, the developer made adjustments to that plan. The staff helped in facilitating that. And that's the way planning process works. It's not someone just throwing something up on the wall and saying, I'm going to do it. It's often perceived as the developers get their way. Well, no, not really. It's a refining process because it goes through the Planning Commission, it goes to us. Well, first it starts with the Planning Department, then it goes through the Planning Commission, and then to us. And along the way, the project is refined. The way I look at things and the way I looked at this project, there's three things I looked at. First, is it a quality development? Is it going to enhance the quality of life for those people that live in that development? And check. I think they've done a good job of developing an appropriate and a good project. Is it appropriate for the area? In other words, does it improve the existing area, or does it at least, is it compatible with the existing development? And I think it improves the property values because it's going to be done well. And there's a check there. And then there's a third thing that I have to look at, that I feel I'm compelled to look at, and particularly in this instance, in this area, is the capacity of the infrastructure. I did my own traffic study. I know, there was several discussions about who did the traffic study and how it was done. Well, I did my own traffic study. I went into your neighborhood at 7 or 8, between 7 and 8 o'clock, and then around noon. and 5 and 6 at night, several days. Not just one day, but several days. And it doesn't take very many trips into that area at those times of days to realize that that infrastructure is being stressed dramatically. The other night, we had a report of capacity of schools in that neighborhood, and we have 3 schools basically that serve that general area there, and they're all approaching capacity. You know, somehow the failure here or something that I think needs to be addressed, and my vote's going to reflect that we need to address something here. And it's not a condemnation of the developers, it's not a condemnation of our staff. But when we have an entrepreneur developer that wants to put a project in, we ought to have gone ahead of them and said this area is appropriate for this type of development, and it gives reasonable expectations to existing property owners. Reasonable expectations. That doesn't mean they know exactly what it's going to be, but you get reasonable expectations. And I'm afraid in these growth areas like this, we don't give enough time for our infrastructure to catch up to the development. I think I made a phrase at our last meeting that what comes first, the chicken or the egg, or the development or the infrastructure. I want our staff, our developers, and our citizens to realize that we have some work to do to give reasonable expectations to each other. We have to speak up, not just when it's our neighborhood that's being affected, but when it's something else. And when we start looking at this long-term plan on land usage in our community and what's going to happen with the open space that's available in our community, we all have to get out and come out, just like you guys have come out when it's in your backyard. We have to contribute to that public debate that makes a difference so that developers and people who want to invest money aren't perceived as the enemy. They want to make a profit just like you do in your job and in your business. We need to give them reasonable expectations of where that should take place so that when they make an investment, we don't set up this contentious relationship that pits somebody against each other, but we have some reasonable expectation of what should happen in that area. And that's going to be some hard work that we've got to do. And we shouldn't come to this place and this point in the deliberation to where somebody has to say yay or nay. It should have come to an agreement. We should be able to come to an agreement as a community as what should happen and when it should take place. Because I believe if this project, given all the ramifications of the infrastructure improvements that we're planning, you give this 2 or 3 years or 3 to 5 years and the picture looks different. But right now, with the stress on 96 and on 99 and the difficulty that I see getting around at certain times of the day, I just can't support this at this time. And it's not one of anybody doing something wrong. I started thinking, well, I should call somebody and tell them what they should do to improvement. How do you address time? How do you address time? Because to me, that's the only conscientious vote that I can make, is that this is just the wrong time. It's not a wrong development. It's not a bad effort. But it's the wrong time for this development in this particular high-stress infrastructure neighborhood. It just shouldn't. So that's where I'm at. Somebody wants to call for the vote.
And let me ask another question. Regardless of how the vote goes tonight, it's my understanding that Mr. Burns can start building tomorrow if he wants to, right? I mean, no, I'm not saying he's going to. I'm just saying he already has the land. He has the plan already approved, right, for a part of it. Is that correct?
Ms. Scales might just add to that, the land that Mr. Burns has under contract or already has purchased is entitled with single-family zoning. He doesn't have an authorization to move forward with construction, but he could turn in development plans for consideration of Planning Commission, and within the matter of a few weeks, he could be under construction on a different single-family plan by later this year.
So therefore, I mean, like I said, he can start,
Yeah, not necessarily tomorrow,
but I'm just saying immediately. I didn't mean to say tomorrow.
Yes.
Already based on the permits and everything he has, right? If it's, that's what I thought. I just wanted to understand it. So if no other comments, I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Mayor, before you, the city recorder calls the roll, I want to remind council that because of the protest that was filed by property owners who live adjacent to the property in question here, passage of this measure will require 5 instead of 4 votes. And that's comes from the city's charter and the city's zoning ordinance.
Okay. All right, Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
No.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
No.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, we'll move into land use matters. Planning Commission recommendations.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland. Sam Huddleston again, standing in for the vacationing Matthew Blomley. Planning Commission has recommended 5 items for public hearing, 1 annexations, 3 rezonings, and 1 zoning amendment. And we are recommending March 19th. We do believe that these items can be comfortably covered in 1 night of public hearings. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. What date are you looking for?
March the 19th.
So moved.
There's 5 on here. Sorry, I'm.
Yes, 5, 1 annexation, 3 rezonings, and 1 ordinance amendment.
I will not be here that night. I'm going to be out of town, so when the Rutherford County, yeah, so spring break's not until the 30th to the 3rd for Rutherford County, I think, that week. For what it's worth, I know we're kind of it's typical. We don't meet that week, so wouldn't want to.
Potential alternate would be the following week on March the 26th. I'm going to look at Mr. Tyndall to see if he has an opinion on March 19th or March 26th.
All right, well.
And you are correct, Mr. LaLance. Spring break is a week of April the 2nd, and then our second meeting of the month is likely a workshop on April the 8th.
Can we not do it April 2nd? Could we?
I think there'll be some of.
Oh, yeah.
Some of this
Gotcha.
group out on spring break.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be, but y'all gonna be gone?
What date are we saying now?
Spring break?
March 19th.
With me.
Y'all gonna be gone? Yeah, but I'll be gone. You went on the 2nd?
March 19th. That's why I said 19th. Yeah, I want March 19th.
You want on March 19th? All right.
I'll be here
All right. 19th.
19th?
All right, do we have a motion for the 19th?
Yeah,
So moved.
We have a motion?
Second.
Second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
No.
Mr. Martin.
I don't think we've ever had anyone vote against
On a
setting
public hearing.
date.
Yes, ma'am.
It's an historic day, man. And
Mr.
women.
Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll move into Gateway Boulevard Extension Professional Services Agreement. Mr. Griffith.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Staff has requested a proposal from ELI to provide survey, preliminary, and final design and development of contract documents for the bidding assistance of the extension of Gateway Boulevard from the existing roundabout near Medical Center Parkway to Robert Rhodes Drive. Primary funding source for this project will come from previous CIP funding. The professional services agreements attached, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Staff recommends approval.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Southwest Elementary Roadway, final change order engineering.
Yes, this is the final change order that balances out the quantities for the project. It reduced the total cost from $1,763,359 to $1,540,184, or a net decrease of $223,175. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. All right, we'll now move into any beer permits.
Mayor, we have a list before you tonight. We have a restaurant ownership change at 529 North Thompson Lane. We have a restaurant new location at 1433 Warrior Drive, Suite A. Another ownership change for a nightclub bar at 1253 Northwest Broad Street. And an ownership change for a lounge event center at 2349 South Church Street. In addition to that, we have 3 fundraisers for the Discovery Center on 3 different dates. 2 are to be held at the Discovery Center, 1 at 1720 Shagbark Trail. And on the regular permits, it looks like they are all still lacking their building codes inspections for their final approval. So if you approve that, we'll wait for that issuance before we issue those permits. The special event permits are in order, and if you approve those, we can issue them tomorrow. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Wright?
If there aren't any, I'll move for approval. Second.
Motion second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right. We'll move into board and commission appointment. Ms. Garland emailed me, and actually, Ms. Wright, you'll appreciate this. She actually emailed me that said, Mayor Reeves, I'm no longer going to be able to serve on the Historic Zoning Commission. So I really wanted to bring to y'all a lifetime appointment to the Historic Zoning Commission for Jennifer Garland, but because of work, she can't serve because of work. So Chase Salas has agreed to fill in. That's the Planning Commission appointment. So there has to be a Planning Commission member serve on the Historic Zoning Commission. So recommending Chase Salas.
Is Jennifer still going to be on the planning commission?
Yes, you just couldn't do both.
Okay, gotcha.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Thank you. Aye. Any other business from staff? Okay, any other business from council? All right, It's our first 6 o'clock meeting, so it feels weird to be done at 7:06. Hey.
It feels good.
So, and, hey, we'll have to say, our next meeting, Craig, when did you say that our next meeting is, that we'll be doing public hearing?
The 6th.
Okay, so the 6th, we are going to see how our business is, but the public hearing was advertised at 7 o'clock.
Just the public hearing portions of that at 7 o'clock, so we'll try and move everything, all of the business up until before 7 o'clock, because we'll start at
Yeah,
6, and then the public hearings will take place after 7.
Actually, I think what may work well, because Mr. Baines had asked me about this, why don't we advertise our public comment section at 6 o'clock for that night? And we'll do that at the beginning of the council meeting, that, and part of that portion of the council meeting won't be televised. And that should get us through 6 to 6:30, and then we can start the televised portion of the meeting, and that should knock it out, as opposed to getting here at 5:30, if that works.
Sounds good.
All right.
We'll do that.
With that, we'll stand adjourned.